An absolute monarchy was born in the Kingdom of Castile, Spain. The standard features of an absolute monarchy were a permanent bureaucracy, a standing army, and national taxes called servicios, which applied mostly to the poor.
Absolutism in Spain developed from silver bullion from Peru. There were several causes for the collapse of absolutism in Spain. These causes include a lack of a strong middle class, agricultural crisis, population decline, failure to invest in productive enterprises, and psychological discomfort.
Spain was going into debt because of the influx of gold and silver from the colonies. Between 1610 through 1650, Spanish trade with colonies decreased. Aristocrats could no longer afford a wealthy lifestyle, increased the taxes, the rent on their land, driving the peasants away.
King Philip IV of Spain left the management of several kingdoms to Gaspar de Guzman, who was the Duke of Olivares. Gaspar de Guzman believed that the solution to Spain's problems was a return to imperialism. Guzman's rule caused a revival of war with the Dutch after an end of a 12-year peace treaty in 1622. A dispute with France over the territory of Mantua brought war in 1628.
These conflicts brought Spain into the 30 Years' War. The war brought the economic disaster to Spain and ruined absolutism instead of Spain. The Treaty of the Pyrenees, in which Spain surrendered large amounts of land, brought an end to the war with France. This treaty marked the end of Spain's great power. While the Peace of Westphalia ended the 30 Years' War, the Treaty of Pyrenees ended the Spanish conflict with the French. The decadence of the Habsburg dynasty and the lack of will to reform contributed to the Spanish failure.
Don Quixote was written by Miguel Cervantes and was one of the greatest masterpieces of world literature. Don Quixote portrays the 16th century Spanish society very accurately. Quixote lives in a world of dreams seeking military power. The term Quixotic means overly idealistic. Constitutionalism was the limitation of government by law. It implies a balance between the authority and power of the government on one hand, and the rights and freedom of people on the other.
In a constitutional republic, the sovereign power resides in the voting people and is exercised by the representatives. In a constitutional monarchy, the king or queen serves as the head of state and possesses some authority. However, the ultimate power lies with the voters.
There was little political stability in 17th century England. England executed a king, experienced a civil war, attempted to stabilize with a military dictatorship, restored the son of the murdered king, and finally created a lasting constitutional monarchy.
Elizabeth I of England created political stability in the 1690s. She carefully managed finances, wisely selected her ministers, and cleverly manipulated Parliament. Elizabeth was succeeded by her cousin James I of England, who was also known as James IV of Scotland.
James believed that he had the divine right or God-given right to rule England. The House of Commons tried to decrease expenditure, however James badly needed the finances. Elizabeth had left James a large royal debt. James could have reduced the debt through wiser management, but he was weak in finances and politics.
The House of Commons increased their wealth and received a better education. As a result of their increased wealth, they demanded the right to vote and squabbled with the king between 1603 and 1640.
In the early 17th century, increasing numbers of people were dissatisfied with the Anglican Church created by Henry VIII. The Puritans wanted to purify the Anglican Church of its Roman Catholic beliefs. The Calvinist virtues, also called Protestant virtues, included hard work and competition, and were represented by prevailing members of the House of Commons.
James and Charles I were both sympathetic towards Roman Catholicism and supported William Laud. In 1637, William Laud tried to impose new elements of the church organization of Scotland, including a new prayer book modeled after the Anglican Book of Common Prayer and bishoprics. The Scottish Presbyterians rejected these new elements.
Charles quarreled with Parliament over his right to collect tax on wine and wool. This argument led Charles to dissolve Parliament in 1629. In 1641, the Parliament passed the Triennial Act, which forced the king to call Parliament every 3 years. The Commons impeached Archbishop Laud. King Charles feared that the Scots would invade England, and thus accepted the Triennial Act.
Charles would not come to terms with the Scots or put down the Irish rebellion without any army, and the Long Parliament refused to give him one. The English Civil War broke out, in which the Parliament Roundheads faced against the pro-monarchist Cavaliers.
Charles I was beheaded on January 30th, and the kingship was abolished. Oliver Cromwell came to power and continued the standing army. He also proclaimed quasi-martial law. Cromwell's regulation of the nation's economy featured aspects of 17th century absolutism, including mercantilism and the Navigation Acts, which required English goods to be transported on English ships. The military government collapsed when Cromwell died in 1658.
The restoration of English monarchy failed to resolve the problems of the attitude towards the Puritans and the Catholics. Parliament was compelled to create religious uniformity, and there was a good relationship between Charles II and Parliament, because of the Cabal, who were both royal advisors and members of Parliament. Charles II came to a secret agreement with Louis XIV, which the French agreed to pay £200,000 for English laws that relaxed laws against the Catholics.
Charles II lost power due to this agreement and gave way to the rule of his brother James II. Two events gave way to a revolution. James II imprisoned several Anglican bishops, and second, his wife produced a male heir. This ensured that England would become Catholic. France supported the idea of a Roman Catholic monarchy outside of France, but James II fled, and William of Orange and Mary took power.
The Revolution of 1688 established the principle that popular sovereignty was divided between the king and parliament. Laws were made in Locke's second treatise, A Civil Government. He states that people set up government to protect the people, and that if government oversteps its function, then it becomes a tyranny.
A cabinet government was formed in which the leading ministers support the majority of the House of Commons and formulate common policy and conduct the business of the country. George II discontinued the practice of the king present at the cabinet, and the crown's power to make decisions declined.
In the Netherlands, there was a federal assembly known as the States General, in which handled foreign matters. The States General appointed representatives, the stadtholder, in each province. In 1602, a group of regions of Holland formed the East India Dutch Company, a joint stock company, which is stock held by multiple people.
Within half of a century, the Dutch East India Company cut heavily into the Portuguese trading in East India. In 1652, the Dutch founded Cape Town on the southernmost tip of Africa.